report. And we're ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Call to order. Call the roll.
No roll call, we have a quorum.
Okay, very good. And let's do the Pledge of Allegiance just for drill. We have a couple new members.
Sure.
Carl, ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we do have somewhat of a direct purpose today, and that would be to set our priorities for 2022, January 2022 through January 2023. In your packet you have the previous year's priority list, and I think we've knocked down a few of those, but it's a good guide. There's still a few things that we need to look at, and then from our work this will carry forward to council for a resolution to approve our work schedule. So if there's additions or changes along the way, let's get those addressed. So I think the clerk will need to guide you a little bit, but I think essentially the idea is to take our 12 months and divide our projects up into those 12 months and in the best way possible.
I might actually defer to the harbor master. I would think that you'd set your goals and priorities and then maybe put them against the calendar. Not sure how you do.
Last time we worked on it, we just decided how we, like he was just saying, what we want to work on and go through, because they have different, everybody has different ideas of where they want to do things, so what they want. But we could look at the priorities first and see where we're at, and then we can jump to the other one.
I was just going to ask if that was possible, if we could get for those of us who are new, a short recap of where we are on the priorities from last year, what's done and what's not.
Well, it's a good question. It's a perfect question. Actually, I'm not sure I can answer that directly because a lot of them are works in progress.
Well, even that's good to know.
We hit some of them in phases. Sometimes we are able to satisfy to a conclusion right away, and sometimes they need to come back. For instance, I think something we'll talk about today is the Lowell Point sewer plant. Has been talked about. It's on a priority list. We're waiting for the engineering report before we can do too much more.
So on that, there was supposed to be at the last meeting we didn't have, so it'll be at this January meeting, you're going to have the report. It was at the last meeting,
Okay.
but we didn't have it.
Okay. So the report, well, let's get that on the January meeting schedule, make sure that that's there.
So if we want to go through like the things that we have done and what's coming up, I know there's still a joint work session coming with planning and zoning.
Well, let me ask you, Norm. I mean, I think the clerk, Brenda, made a good point. This is around what you need. Is there something that you need to be elevated in priority to review that we need to look at?
No, I think pretty much everything's what we've been talking about, how things are going.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Could we, would it make sense to just start with the version we have from 2021 to 2022 and just start with priorities and go down the list? I mean, everything under the priorities that's there now, have any of those changed? Or is there anything we want to add to that list?
There's two phases to this. One would be to have the priorities, and we do have that working list. The other is to organize them into a format for the coming year.
Right.
And I really think that's really where we're at.
Right.
I think you're correct in looking at the 2021 priorities. They haven't changed a great deal. They're still there.
Right.
There's still talk about the fishery issues. I mentioned the halibut bycatch at the council meeting the other night. That's still on there. So
Is that on here though?
it was on the previous year's discussion.
Under short-term, maybe monitor and provide recommendations regarding fishery issues.
There it is.
Yes.
So they just came out with an announcement on the fisheries issue. I didn't print it out, but
You want me to go with Synapse? Apparently, they have, in the last survey, they discovered a 28% increase in the halibut on their surveys out here. They also made note that it looks like what was not going on for a while was other fish transiting into Area 3A, which is the largest area. This year, they note that they believe that that increase is a direct result of things going back to normal. Bycatch was supposedly down about to 3 million pounds. That's something we still have to stay on top of because there's 4 initiatives out there in front of the council about the bycatch brought to them by the federal legislators. And one of them is to try to attach bycatch to abundance.
Well, I think it's still a topic then, Carl, and that's what, so I think if we wanted to take a meeting in mid-spring,
Yep.
possibly have the information available and review that.
Yeah, no decisions are made until late January, early February
So,
anyway.
so
that's
if
a
I
good idea.
suggest, I'm looking at work sessions on February 16th and March 16th, one of those, for halibut bycatch.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
I really like the idea that it isn't just related, the way the wording is, it's related to all fishery issues. You know, they're all important to our community, all of them. So the health of the biomass out there is very much important to the health of the fisheries.
So I question whether this topic should actually be under priorities instead of short-term goals. Because what I'm getting is that we need to be monitoring this sort of as an ongoing thing. So it doesn't really feel like a short-term goal, it feels like a priority that we're always sort of watching.
Well, probably both. But we could put it in any category, discuss it, in any way it comes up. I think
Yeah.
the industry is going to have some real interest in this.
Yeah, I think it should be an ongoing thing that we monitor. I mean, we could have short-term goals under the general umbrella of specifically bycatch or things like that, but I think the monitoring it and paying attention and
Why don't we take that as an
feedback.
example and set that for a February or March, that's your preference, work session, and deal with it. And we'll use that as an example of how we're going to move forward with the rest of this.
I personally would prefer February. That date in February, in March is the Boston Seafood Show, so I know I won't be here that time.
Okay? So let's go ahead and pencil in for that work session, the bio, what do we call it? We'll use the language that's in there.
Just says all fisheries issues impacting our community.
There you go. And I just might, if I could, to follow up with what Board Member Hughes said, changing data is going to be the problem that we're going to have probably for the next decade or more, changing data. You know, when was the cold or warm impact of the Atlantic felt in the Arctic? There's new surveys now that say that our data is skewed. So I think ongoing is correct. Okay. I would ask the harbor master, the projects that you have on the table, I think the northeast the boat ramp, you don't need, you don't need anything from us.
No, project's moving.
And the SMIC development plan,
We finished that. So it was supposed to come to you this last meeting, talking with the clerk, that we decided, even though we're just up, not a full update to go to council, that we should document that you guys approve updating the plan, correct? That way there we have a record of you guys are working on updating the plan.
so we would need a resolution.
I got it ready to go. It's
Oh,
just,
you got it ready to go.
You didn't have a meeting. It was at
It's in our
that meeting.
packet from last meeting.
Okay,
It'll be at the next meeting.
okay, all right. When is that?
January
Fifth.
5th?
5th, yeah.
Okay.
I would like to apologize for missing the December meeting. I wasn't planning on it, but something came up I had to say.
I don't think you're really on one. Okay. One of of the things I would like to get on this is our discussion of education in the community. It was one of our priorities in development, and it really needs fleshed out. We need to get a little bit more input on that from the local sources like ABTEC
Right.
and even child development places.
Wasn't that on our January meeting agenda? Didn't we say we were gonna do that in January? Brenda, do you remember?
I don't remember without looking it up, but I thought you were going to, I'm taking this from memory, draft a plan to bring it back to the board to review the next steps, maybe?
I don't think we're ready for a draft of plan yet. I think we need to have some input from,
Yeah, I thought we were gonna do a
Identify-
work, I thought we were gonna do a work session and invite a bunch of different people.
I'll look at that if that's all right, because I.
yeah, please.
Because I think that was the January work session, not meeting, but work session, I thought.
Well, let's go ahead and pencil it in for
All
now.
right.
That's January 19th.
Yeah, yeah.
What are we penciling in?
Education, development, and
Hospitality,
yeah.
Had you previously identified agencies or people to invite to that work session?
Yeah,
some,
yeah, yeah. I don't think it was a complete list, but it was definitely a starting point anyway.
And we determined that was an economic driver for our community, besides being important to us as citizens, that there's so much education activity here in Seward, including the boat and the ABTEC and all the marine training over across the bay, all those things.
And Brandy, just for your background, it came about as a discussion because we were so short on employees last summer.
Oh,
Figuring out a way where we can be taking people here and also young people from around the state and getting them trained into
marine trade.
tourism in a broad sense, right? Not just tourism, but the whole supporting, so that we have more people to hire, basically.
Okay.
We have an ongoing issue with alternative energy opportunities. I think that we should continue with that even.
So may
some-
I make a suggestion? As Vice Chair Paquette said, I think we should go down, if we're jumping all over the place, so we should maybe go
All
down
right.
the list.
Okay,
Go down the list, and then we can mark off what we've done, and then we can, after we're done, then we can go and put it on.
pardon my ADD.
No, it's okay, it's just that, because we're jumping all over, and then we might miss something.
We'll get them all.
Okay,
That's
all
what-
right.
I like that, Norm. So we started with asking you about support harbor operations and harbor
Yeah.
users. And you felt pretty comfortable with where you're at with that. We've been through rates. Is there any rate issue coming up this year?
No, not for SMIC.
Okay.
And the tariff is automatic, the 1.6 CPI increase. And this was the biannual for the, some of the stuff that we worked on a few years back.
Okay. And I'm going down the priority list.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what's from
Yeah.
2021.
Okay?
Okay, so Chamber of Commerce, I think after Jason left, we haven't really established a strong relation with Chamber again. I think we really want to work on that, so hopefully at the January meeting, when the Chamber comes to give us a report, we can develop a little stronger relation.
yeah, I sort of updated the new executive director, Kat Sorensen, on the process, so you can expect to see her
Good,
at your meetings.
good. Energy alternatives, we're up to that one. And I did talk to Consul the other night, and told them I thought we were satisfied that we've done a good job with promoting or pushing the meter interconnect system, and that the city utility done a pretty good job of implementing it. But I think that's going to continue. I know there's going to be more and more of that available.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, on
Yeah,
that one,
please.
I have been involved with the wind stuff for a while, and one of the things that we do is periodic performance, against goal. And with residential solar, it's a little, it's kind of more of a personal thing, but in order to make better recommendations for types of energy, I feel it'd be helpful if we had some way to either solicit or bring in the current users that made installations, and if we could get reports about how how they're performing.
For photovoltaic, you're talking about?
Yeah, for photovoltaics. It seems like we broke the ice on it, and it'd be nice maybe
Get a review.
July or August,
Yeah.
or after next summer to.
Okay, well, you want to do that for late summer then?
We can try.
Okay, and would you like to invite them to a regular meeting?
What would your recommendation be? Work session would be less formal. It's nothing to act on, just a report, right?
I would say, well, we have a hiatus until September,
Until September, right?
so,
That would give a really good picture of how things are working, and I'd like to use that information to,
okay. Well, how about the January, or the September 21st work session to try to get a review of the implementation of alternate energy programs here in town?
Would it make sense to reach out to Sustainable Seward and ask them to gather some of that information for us, or help bring it together?
it would be helpful. I think there's no like one group, right? It would be homeowners and groups of concerned citizens that have this information. I could provide some of my data on this too.
I wonder if we could invite the people that have gotten their solar panels put in to come and give feedback about their experience.
I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, either come all or
Right.
maybe consolidate the
Yeah,
reports, but
yeah.
that'd be really
Well,
exciting to hear.
And I think that's really appropriate. We have the contractors and the advocates like Solarise Seward or some of the rest of them, and that's somewhat of they're gonna come with a perspective, not quite exactly, how does it actually work? How satisfied are you with it? But
They might be able to, outside of us, pull together the group and
Come on.
put together a presentation with their individual data to make a more
Yeah.
cohesive, concise report to us about what they've found.
Well, we'll get it on the calendar and then we'll get some people to participate in that, I think.
Under this category, we all got a letter from Phil Calusa about the rebate program, the heat pump rebate program, and I think that's gonna be on our January meeting agenda to discuss. Is that right?
I think
Brenda?
This letter, I don't
There's just a letter, it's just a letter for you folks to read.
Yeah, but it
by
was
email.
talking about, I mean, that's kind of dropped off the radar, right? We had talked about it, and we never got a program in place, so revisiting whether or not,
Well, I know that the electric is still working on it, I don't know where they're at with it though.
right, so,
Well, I think it is on the agenda for one of our meetings, and I'm
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
that Mr.
Correct.
Calusa will be happy to participate and will bring good information.
If I could add a quick note to that too. This came through the email there, that Renewable Energy Alaska project. They highlighted AT&T in Southeast. They have a $500 program, and their local Native Corp, Sealaska, added another $500 for heat pumps. So that might be we could look at how they structured that.
You got a correspondence on that?
Yeah, you can have.
So you're in contact with them, or?
No, that's just that was just on their blog. Their just came in today, so but that was good timing. Give us something to look at.
2 point,
Well,
what is
How do we deal with
that?
that?
Could you forward that to the harbor master?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we do have a heat pump on our, I think it's a January meeting. I saw it somewhere on an agenda. If not, let's put it on. This is, the next item is a joint meeting with planning and zoning for SMIC overlay. I think that's gone back and forth. I don't think that's ever been completed. And I think part of it was scheduling. We weren't able to find a schedule where both P and Z and BACAT was able to meet. So I think we need to get that back. If that's something the city needs, and we need to have some time to work on that and get that corrected.
I know that P and Z looked at it.
It was discussed, but
I don't
never.
know how far they were gone, so we'll have to look at where we're at with that.
Okay,
Mm.
so you can bring that back to us if
Yeah, I don't
there
know
needs to be a
if
meeting.
P&Z
We'll have to get that into one of our meetings.
Was able to finish what they were looking at.
Track progress and make recommendations related to ongoing development at SMIC. This is something I think is pretty darn important, that we look as far down the road on this as we can. And I'm not sure how to bring all the players together that are doing this already. I mean, you've got everybody that's a participant with facilities over there, the leaseholders, the harbor, the JAG, the contractors. All those folks have an interest in seeing this in a planned development. It's important that it continue to develop and all the available ground that's over there be utilized in a smart way. And I'm sure we have difference of opinion about what that smart way is, but we need to get it out and talk about it. So I would like to have a work session on that. I see March 16th as a reasonable time for that.
What did we put on March 16th?
Nothing yet. The fisheries issues went on February 16th.
Yeah.
But board member Hamdahl won't be available on March 16th.
Right.
Will not?
She
No.
said she'd be out of state.
Oh,
That's the Boston Seafood Show.
when would you be back? I think it'd be good for you to be able to participate in that.
It's just 3 days. It's the
So,
16th through the
The
19th.
following month? Okay, well,
Sure.
without objection, let's go ahead and set it so we can get that participation. Okay.
So, Chair,
Yes, sir.
you missed a couple in the short-term goals as we were coming
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about priorities. The next one was review the vessel property tax and provide recommendation to council.
Do we need to keep that on there?
So, when we talked about it, it was gonna affect the general fund budget, because that's where all the money's going. So, it would put them in the red. So that's why we left it alone for now, until we were done with all COVID and stuff like that. So, we can move it to long-term goals. As a suggestion for you.
How do those two topics relate to each other if they do, the property tax and the tariff? Are they completely two separate things, or?
The tariff, yeah, this is property tax, it goes through the borough, so everything goes through the borough, and it is attached to the mill rate, so.
And if I remember, when we looked at this before, we looked at it in comparison to what other harbors.
To Homer has a flat rate. The only one that has a similar to us, I believe, was Kenai, but, but Homer had a flat rate, and I think Cordova has a flat rate, but they're not part of our area, but.
And is this a review that just a perfunctory thing, or is there a problem?
See if we can go by a flat rate. I know a lot of these vessels like to go to a flat rate. It'd be cheaper on all the vessel owners, and we discussed that we would, the larger vessels, a flat rate, and the smaller vessels will stay the same. we discussed that, but it affected general fund, and that's when COVID happened, and that's why we didn't move forward with it.
So are those, Norm, are those year to year, or is there a twilight?
If we establish the rate, it's got to go to council, it's got to go to the borough, I believe afterwards. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody about the borough, but I think it's got to go to the borough to get approved also.
And what kind of time frame are you talking about? I mean, it can be during the year or any particular time of the year that's best?
Yeah, I don't know, I think just, if we just discuss it again and see where the budget's at. Like I said, the main thing is about the budget, how it's going to affect the budget.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And I want you to weigh in on this, on what I'm, the goal was to keep or bring more vessels to Seward, but now we have a very crowded harbor.
And we have a long wait list on all of our,
And I don't know if
that was brought up before too, thank you.
if it's necessary. I mean, we have the business now that Norm has a huge wait list across the bay to park boats there. The harbor's full,
Right.
plugged, there's no place to expand.
That's why I asked, because,
That's where the question came up, but then, like I said, COVID happened and then it got shelved.
I'm the first that wants lower taxes, but if it's not necessary because we're performing at an optimal level.
Well, a review doesn't automatically mean an increase. A review may mean that, in fact, you want to take a look at it just to make sure that you understand where you're at. If I understand, the discussion then would probably disclose that there should be no change, or maybe even a reduction.
Yeah.
So as far as a review, I think it is appropriate.
March 16th,
Say it again?
March 16th.
Well, sure. that's
Maybe
open
it should
right now.
go into long-term goals because it could change down the road. Everything, all the parameters could change.
Well, I think it should be a yearly, well, regularly thing.
Yeah.
If it's not yearly, it should be regular, but if it's something that we didn't complete last year, or if things have changed, I think everything's on the table right now because of COVID. I don't know about everybody else, but 2020 seemed like a lost year to me, and we got a big hole, and somewhere in here, we're gonna talk about how we're gonna climb out of that hole. So reviewing things is not a problem, in my mind, even if it means status quo. But to ignore it, I don't think that's policy.
So review both of them, the vessel property tax and the harbor tariff on the March 16th work session?
If the harbor master thinks he can handle both at the same meeting, I would say that'd be fine.
What do you think, Norm?
Well, the vessel tax, I can just bring our wait list and, see where we're at with it, but because we're gonna be redoing it here again, but we still have a long wait list. And the harbor tariff, I do want to bring something before you. So there's part of it we haven't touched for years that needs to be properly adjusted, and I have that ready to go. So we had one of our staff was working on that already, and proposed changes to the tariff that we can bring before you, and you can look at it and decide how we want to move forward, and then we can set something we can send to council to adjust the tariff.
Okay. So you're on the work session for March 16th with
Okay.
those two items?
Sure.
I think it would be nice to know, vessel A,
We
what
had
it
that,
costs in Seward versus what it would cost in Homer.
we had that
as opposed to
that
just a-
last thing, she still had that.
Yeah.
It was in that one meeting, I don't know if you were here or not, but we had that breakdown for different areas of what it costs to Seward, Homer.
Okay.
That was for storage. Wasn't it for the storage?
No, but we also did it for vessel property tax.
Yeah.
I remember the storage one, I don't remember the
Yeah.
tax, I might not have been here.
Okay.
If you could put that in there too,
Sure.
that'd be great.
Okay. Okay, so does that sort of clean it up? I think then we go into education. We talked a little bit about the heat pump, or if I am caught up. I mean, there's a general category under priorities, promote quality of life in Seward residents. That's everything we're talking about here.
And did we agree that we were going to add under priorities an extra bullet, monitor all fisheries? Did we
Yeah.
agree to that?
Yes.
We did.
Okay. Where did we end up with the planning and zoning?
Nowhere. We're waiting, the clerk will research, I shouldn't say nowhere, we need to find out where we're at.
I feel like we all had a meeting at the library. Did anybody else go to that besides me?
Maybe last
Wasn't I
summer.
there?
When was that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Last summer, maybe? Was
Yeah.
it in the summer? Yeah. Because it was maybe while we were on our hiatus. It was in an evening meeting.
I'm just a little out of touch with it, so I don't.
I
have
feel
any
like we
specifics.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. I went to it.
Yeah, I think you were there.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, Linda, you were there too.
yeah.
Yeah, I might even been there, I
I don't know if much was.
But was it about the
Because
SMIC
Laura-
overlay or was it about the airport?
I didn't hear the last of it. That was.
Oh.
don't know. Yeah, it was
Maybe
about the airport.
Maybe it was the
It was
airport.
about-
It was about the,
Yeah.
so I don't think we've actually talked
No,
about,
I don't think we
fully
have.
about the SMIC overlay.
Well, should we tentatively mark off one of our work session dates? Or does planning and zoning, they have to meet at night, don't they?
Yeah, they meet at night.
Yeah, so we'll
So
have
it'll
to,
be an extra meeting for you guys to attend.
yeah, okay.
So far, we've done everything in work sessions. I'd have to have some advice on what are we doing for meetings? Are these all topics? I mean, the meetings are generally something we bring a resolution to discuss, right?
Well, to take action when you need to, yeah,
So that would come out of a work session.
potentially, yeah.
You might want to add in there the work that you're doing for talking about telephonic participation in a meeting. Put
Right.
it on the agenda.
Yeah, I think that's on the agenda for the January 5th meeting.
Is it?
It is now.
No.
What about doing that joint work session on May 18th or something like that? The final one before hiatus.
They have to do night, P and Z.
I don't have a problem doing it at night.
We can bring that back to you and schedule it. with-
Yeah.
Well, let's do that. See if we- yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we have this, I think we have everything on the first page.
No.
No? We're up
Track and evaluate the progress of interconnect policy, heat pump rebate. I know you talked about it, but you didn't actually set,
That's the January
Sure.
meeting. Because Calusa sent that letter, and we're gonna
Correct.
discuss it
okay.
in January.
at the regular meeting.
Yeah. So the reduced SMIC development plan?
You're supposed to update it yearly if there's anything, so I think we can do it in that in addition to a later work session later in the year.
So does that need to follow the joint work session with P and Z, or can we?
The plan's there, so, I mean, the SMIC overlay is, what were they working on that?
I was not attending at that time.
Is P and Z working on a plan?
It's been under schedule, I've been in the work sessions a while, before Jason started, so.
Yeah, it was before, like, wasn't really participating in those meetings when I was working for the chamber.
Well, if I might, if I remember the SMIC plan, it's kind of broad. And I don't know that it has, beyond the perimeter of what's already developed, if it's talked a whole lot about that other expansion, except that hoping that it would happen.
But, yeah, but part of, the PACAPS is to update this plan every year. So that's why I said put it in later on in the year, and if something comes up, we can, like maybe the November or the October work session or the November work session. And then we can approve it at the next meeting, approving the updated plan, like I'm gonna bring to you the next meeting.
I'd push for the November one as opposed to October. Odds are very good I won't be here in October.
So I'm confused. We have a SMIC work session, a SMIC overlay work session, or development plan work session on the 16th or the 20th of April. Then we're gonna have another one with P&Z.
Well, I thought that was
Overlay.
fisheries review.
So
on
the
20th.
P&Z conversation would address an overlay, so that would take into account zoning
Zoning.
issues, which
It
would
wouldn't,
be,
yeah, it wouldn't do too much to the plan.
Yeah, it's two separate things.
Yeah.
Two separate things.
and the April work session, I thought was to look at the development
Yeah, that was
That's
SMIC
what I thought.
development with all of the,
in a broader sense.
Yeah, then that's why we had set it on the 20th, so the board would be closed.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, we didn't talk about support legislation and promote visibility of all businesses, but I'm not entirely sure what we're gonna talk about.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just thinking about that one, that seems like it's at that fifth bullet point is at the core of what this body is intended to focus on, is spurring economic expansion and development and city administration. Well, I would say that two items that before you guys get too far into planning out your calendar that I would strongly suggest and advocate that you put on your radar. Number one is maybe collaborating with the chamber to do some sort of outreach and hearing from local businesses what their barriers to growth are. You know, we've got a lot of anecdotal evidence, but we are short on specific information. Director Bickling, before he came over from the chamber, did some work. I'm aware of that, where chamber looked at the labor shortage in Seward. I definitely think that that would be a second specific known issue that this body should collaborate on getting better data on. Especially if you can do that earlier in the year, you know, as early on in the winter or spring as possible. You know, a lot of employers are going to start their hiring process at the end of next month or the beginning of February, but that would definitely be something that city administration would feel that would be valuable. And just I guess a third bullet point to put on there. So Director Bickling and myself will be talking to Lisa Murkowski's office tomorrow morning to talk about temporary worker visas, and that's something that is of high importance, I know, to a lot of businesses in this community. But getting better information from businesses on exactly which visas they use, how they use them, how that supplements local workers, etc. And any data that we can get will help us in our advocating for legislation and other actions that will enhance local business. I would really, really think that PACAB is in a good position to take those specific issues on your plate.
Item 3 is that J1 program, is that what that loose?
J1 and H2B, and
H2B.
maybe Board Member Homdahl can chime in, but a lot of people use the word J1 when in fact you're talking about the H2B,
Okay.
non-agricultural
Well, that's me.
temporary worker visa. And why this is important is the State Department runs the J1 program and the Department of Labor runs the H, so the H1B, the H2A, and the H2B programs. And so as we go forward with advocating for change, it's really important that we're talking to the right folks about the right visa types, because they are completely separate topics.
So
And maybe
if I-
Board Member Homdahl wants to chime in on that.
and I think both are important to our community. The J1s are definitely more suitable for some of the tourism type applications, whereas definitely in the seafood industry and some of the other non-traditional, not 40-hour-a-week jobs, the H2B is imperative.
Kathy?
I just sat in on a lodging industry seminar on the two different types of visas. The J1, as Tim Dillon said, those students that come, it's important to educate the State Department that they are not, even though it's a cultural program, they are not here just to go work a few hours a day and go home and, enjoy themselves. Those students come to make money to take home. They are very serious workers. They are super dedicated, and 99.9% of them will hold 2 or 3 jobs while they're here, just like Dylan said. The thing about the H-2B visas is we can use them in hospitality and in tourism, but you really end up having to have a lawyer to do the paperwork. So whereas the J-1 doesn't cost the employer anything other than the salary and the lodging and whatever that you're giving them when they get here, the H-2B visas are going to cost you anywhere from $6,500 in legal fees to a lot more than that. So they're not, that visa program is really not good for small mom and pop operations, which is really sort of the predominance of what we have here in terms of business.
And I think the point I'm trying to make to you is that the more that we can understand, because we don't really have an understanding at this point in time, at least to my awareness, on how those are being used and what specific barriers to labor. I know you guys have talked about training workers, but I think probably even more importantly is just getting workers here as a primary.
Let's take a look and see if this is that important to the city and they're big topics, and I can see that. I'm not entirely sure that all 3 of them could fit in a single program, so we might, or a single work session, but I think if we take the January, this is early enough that we could plan for a January meeting, a work session, and take at least one of these things. Maybe 2. The chamber probably could add quite a bit into this, but I would suggest we take the visa program and the chamber together in a work session and talk about those 2. Labor is a bigger picture that I think you could then bring in a lot of people. And maybe a little bit later in the spring, before construction season, possibly before fisheries, we could get some input from both the users of labor and the suppliers of labor. Because there are those sources available in this community and in the peninsula. You mentioned Tim Dillon, but there's lots more. Labor unions, job source people. JAG is a perfect example of bringing labor in. He imports labor because there's not immediate available sources. But he'd be happy to use local sources. I know he would, if he could fill it out. So my suggestion would be we take the January 19th meeting and put in a work session for the Chamber of Commerce and for the visa program. And in the meantime, if we can collect some information for the definitions of these programs, I appreciate what Vice Chair McCat has said here about the differences in the HB and the J1.
I'd be happy to put together a little bit of a history. I've worked with both programs for over a decade, so I'm pretty familiar with the requirements.
And if you can get that to the clerk, and then we can all take a look at that.
So I thought we had education develop on the January 6th.
Well, I'm suggesting we move that further, possibly the May meeting just before summer break.
May meeting or work session?
The May work session, I'm sorry. And I say that because I think Assistant Manager has brought an important thing to us that is really what we're charged to do. Advise council, advise the city, do some vetting. I think the important thing will be that we can gather how we're going to gather data. There's resources. I think we all need to put our heads together and offer that to the court. So why don't we put education and labor together? They're not too far off the track. on the work session on May 18th. When would the city actually be trying to implement something? It would be doing it in concert with who? What would be the team?
Well, I would say, to be honest, it's probably going to be a little late. What I was trying to get at is, I think, just gaining a better understanding from businesses. So that fifth bullet point is supporting actions and legislation that promote the viability of all businesses. And obviously that's pretty expansive, but the more data that we can collect from local businesses and an understanding of where they're coming from, that assists as we interact with our legislators, whether they're the local, our delegation in Juneau, or whether that's our federal delegation.
Probably a little both. The chamber would have some of that. There must be something like a B&B organization here in town, that type of thing. No. So we take one of the leading B&B people, ask them to present. But that's sort of where one side of that is. And then you have the businesses and the tourist industry that have a swell of manpower needs and fishery. That's the other side of that. Those are the biggest places you see it, but I think Sea Life Center has had a problem with manpower. Used to be a lot of retired people went down there. I'm not sure that's happened in the last couple of years. That's perfect. I appreciate you bringing that to us. It really goes along with my concern about how we're going to dig out of this and move forward. It's a different world. Paying employees a signing bonus? Or is it? Okay.
It's a new world, Bruce.
Yeah, yeah. I'll join. Okay. So we have, were those the three things that the city had on their plate? And I know that labor putting that off a little bit, but I don't think it'll actually be completely off the table. We can talk about that too. Ideas? Thoughts?
I have some, but I'm gonna wait till you get done with the list.
Okay. Update the boat harbor plan. This used to be the small boat harbor, but this is now the boat harbor, correct?
Correct.
And that's a yearly updating?
This one we haven't touched in a while.
Ooh. And you've looked at it, and
There's some things in there, just, when was it we updated it? 15?
It's been a few years.
Yeah.
Maybe we could just take a look at it with that.
Yeah. We can send it out to you and you guys can, look at it, and then we can, if you want to do, the October work session maybe?
I think that sounds right, Norm. And then if we have to do something, we shall get it on a resolution that can go to the council even this year. All right, well, we got a big one next, I think, is input for capital improvement plan, provide input for capital improvement plans.
So my suggestion is I'd have it earlier in the year because we have to have it ready for budget, so,
And when is that?
what's that?
When is budget?
We're gonna start putting that together probably in June next year, so.
Okay.
June of 2022,
Correct.
and you'll bring that as a final resolution to council.
So that was just passed, the 2022 capital improvement plan was just approved at the meeting this past Monday. But we start putting that together in concert with the budget. So anything you do, it'd be nice to have that done before you guys go out on recess.
Can we put it on the May 4th meeting?
I would,
would say.
April 6th?
Or March.
March 2?
I think the April's, yeah, March might even be better.
Okay?
March 2nd meeting,
Yep.
And the city will provide us something for review.
correct?
Administration will provide us something. Okay. Yeah, I think that gives us enough time to relook at something if we have to. Monitor and provide recommendations to council regarding all fisheries issues impacting
You
the community.
skipped one
I think they
again.
had, so we've done
You
that.
skipped one again.
Yep.
Submit a climate action plan for council for adoption.
I thought he did it on purpose.
But I know it's an ongoing thing because you have a
It-
committee, so.
Yeah, well, I don't, the committee at this point is just Bruce and
I mean, it's
myself.
something that Kabari just brought up at a meeting, somewhere's in there, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to stay on here, and at the same time, I feel so lost as to where we are in it.
So maybe that one would make sense after the 21st meeting where we're going to hear from the solar efficacy. We'll be thinking about it and have had some discussion, and probably at that meeting, we're gonna get some key input from other organizations that are working on that.
Right.
That might make sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's the monitor, provide recommendations to council for all fisheries issues impacting community, correct?
That's our.
No, the
No,
Climate action
climate
plan.
action plan to the council.
How do we get to that? Where's that?
I'm not
Right
sure.
above monitor and provide
Oh, I
recommendations.
see.
Third one down.
so Brandy is suggesting October 5th for the meeting?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was looking at my glasses.
October 5th would be the meeting where we would discuss the climate action plan.
Yeah, that's October 6th,
5th, yeah.
5th, yes. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. So we've done the fisheries, we've done the climate action.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
just,
sir.
and there are people in this room that know way more than I do about the fishery, but tackling all the fisheries issues in that amount of time, is it worth separating? You guys just talked a lot about halibut. Is it worth separating the state and the federally managed? Because those are two vastly different topics. And especially if you talk about the way you advocate for change and that sort of thing, because fisheries are so important, is it worth splitting that into separate discussions? I mean, you're talking about like halibut, I mean, that's a multinational
Right.
issue as opposed to fisheries, which is much more of a locally managed issue.
I might make a suggestion to, on the April 20th meeting, to schedule it for 2 hours.
The fisheries meeting is the 16th.
Oh.
The 20th is this Nick.
We are on the schedule for 2 hours, typically, aren't we?
I didn't think so.
Your timeframe is,
It's 12 to 2, and we tried
Oh.
to, because of, like, Board Member Smith and Snyder, who have jobs that require, they're taking their
Right.
lunchtime, we tried to hold it to 1 hour, but I think we take the appropriate time, so we're looking at 2 hours at some of this. I would say, and this is not my industry, Board Member Hughes, Holden, and Lawrence all are involved in the fisheries very directly. But I see salmon, halibut, yeah, one's state, one's federal, it's that simple sort of, but they're tied together. It all comes to do with the economy of the city of Seward to a great degree. And I don't know that we're gonna come out with any concrete thing that says, stop the halibut bycatch or reduce the size of the pink salmon you can catch, or whatever, but or the amount. But I don't think it would be unusual to be able to talk about both of them, at least at this level. I would hope that by that discussion we would come up. We've done it. Actually, I think we've sent a letter. I think we sent a letter objecting to halibut bycatch. or the waste of whatever you want to call it, the waste of the fish on the high seas. Throwing fish overboard or whatever.
I know there was a recommendation, but I don't know if they did it. I don't know the
Well, I think we should do it again. I mean,
Yeah.
on and on and on. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and eventually, I see action in Congress with Senator Sullivan and Murkowski on this. They got to drag everybody else along. It's not just them.
I don't think it's a bad idea to stick it on an agenda for a fall meeting, especially prior to the beginning of the Board of Fish meetings. Because if we just have it on an agenda sometime in the fall, if we don't need it, we can just say nothing to report. But if it's there, especially if we go over the priorities or the requests and proposals to the Board of Fish, there may be something that we want to put a letter behind in support or against once those proposals are out. And if it's on the agenda, then it's easy to talk about it and decide whether it's something we want to support or not.
You said the fall.
Yeah, before the
So
Board
we're
of
talking
Fish
about
meetings.
September, October?
Twice, once in the spring, once in the fall?
Yeah, if we just have it on the agenda, and then, like I said, if we don't have anything, we just skip over it.
I would like to see a resolution on like a September meeting saying that this board does recommend some action. And we'll discuss that action, but it's to contact our legislative representatives.
Board Member Homdahl, does the local AC advise the Board of Fish on just sport issues, or does it also commercial?
Also commercial,
Okay.
if it makes sense. So they can advise wherever their actions might impact either fishery. So they're less likely to comment on commercial fish, but it depends if we're talking about the Prince William Sound. Commercial fisheries obviously affects both industries, so it can go back and forth.
Might be worth involving the local AC in some sort of capacity if you're gonna.
Yeah, as well as the fishing groups. I mean, that's the thing, is once proposals are put out, then you have a chance to read through them. So I was actually going to suggest a little later than September, because that's pretty early for,
How late?
probably the November 2nd meeting is, I think.
Follow your advice.
Can I ask this? What does AC mean?
Advisory committee?
Would, in your opinion, it be incorrect to have a resolution that's saying that we're supporting something? We can debate it, we can amend it.
No, as long as a board we're in agreement, I don't think
Okay,
that's.
so I suggest we have a resolution supporting the reduction of resource waste and resource management. And that can be high seas or state or federal, I think is that
So this is gonna be a November meeting or work
the
session?
November meeting.
Just a general fisheries item on there.
Mr. Chair, it is up to the body to determine how many work sessions you have as well. So you are not restricted to have just one meeting and one work session a month. I'll just mention that.
Thanks.
If there's issues, you can always call for more.
Well, I think everybody on this board would agree with you, Madam Clerk, that if we needed more time to do something, we'd take it. I think it's important, that we provide a conduit or opportunity to collect data for the city or to vet information from the citizens group. And it seems to me we're talking about, what is this, 24 meetings? I didn't count them up, but I mean, if you get a work session and a meeting, that's 12 months of 24.
Yeah, except we take a 3-month hiatus.
Oh,
18.
well, if something really comes up, and we have met in the summer before, we can look at that. If we get something in the spring that really needs some work, we can consider how we can make that happen during the summer. Speaking about meetings, in January on our agenda, we should be having an election for the chair Is that correct?
Yeah, I have that noted.
Send a board member to AML.
So may I make a suggestion, we put that also on the October 5th meeting?
The AML,
Yeah, it's just gonna be voting on who goes, it shouldn't take,
sure. When is that meeting
it's
typically?
in November.
And who went to it last year? Somebody?
Nobody went this year.
Nobody went this year. I went to
Year
some
before.
virtual sessions in 2020.
I think, we didn't have a meeting, I think that's what happened, right?
Well, I heard Tim Dillon talk about AML the other night. And well, there's a lot of potential there, a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, but I agree, like, I didn't get anywhere near the experience of what it would have been doing the virtual stuff. It was very, very different. So my interest would remain to go when we can go in person.
Okay, Board Member Smith, how's your time?
I can handle.
Anybody else short on time?
I need to be out of here by 1:30 if we can.
Okay, well, I think we're close.
Yeah.
Okay. So, discuss water, wastewater infrastructure and its ability to support economic growth and evaluate the environmental impacts. We have that coming to us, at least the engineering report for the Lowell Point sewer plant this spring, is that correct? I think,
We already have the, I think if you're
Next
talking about
meeting.
the engineering report, I think we got that.
It's gonna be at the next meeting.
yeah, okay. That, the next meeting, January 5th, same?
That's when it's gonna be on the meeting.
Yeah. Support the work with city utility and its customers to develop an improved grid tie designs and net metering. I think we can scratch that one off.
Yeah,
I was gonna
yeah,
say,
that's been
we
done.
did that. Well, that's fun.
Hooray.
That was the success of the new electrical administration.
And by the way, BTW, the city has awarded a contract for an electrical upgrade to, for the July area. And
To Nash Road.
from Nash Road, and that's a big project. A lot of work there, and it should have a tremendous impact. Along with, just out of curiosity for information, Chugach is doing some real development up north, including a new switch at mile 24, which will allow the city to provide power north in a much smoother way than it does now. So in case there are outages at the Dave's Creek substation, the city of Seward could then provide power back through that intertie. It's pretty interesting upgrade.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
if I may, I'd like to go back just for a minute to the water and wastewater infrastructure. If it's okay with everybody, I would like to stick on the April 6th meeting agenda, just a bullet point. The APDES has just released a new wastewater discharge plan that affects everybody who's discharging into state waters. It goes into effect the 1st of June. I'm currently writing our discharge plan. But I'd like just on the agenda a moment to go over that and what it means for local businesses, the changes. And it's not necessarily going to impact, but when we start talking about sustainability, what we're allowed to discharge, how they're monitoring it, what processing facilities are being, what level they're being kept to, I think it's valuable
Public and
information. Mhm. Well, this is public, that I'm familiar with. They've changed the wastewater discharge for seafood processors and other people discharging directly to navigable waters.
Excellent. I'm so
If
glad
you
you
just want
brought
to
that
stick
up.
it on there, I'll give an update for what the
Yep.
changes in the plan are.
And you said the April 6th meeting?
Yeah. And that could just be listed as an APDES update.
participate in a joint work session with Historic Preservation Commission on downtown historic overlay.
So HP is starting, they've talked about it for a bit, but in January, I think they'll start working on pulling that together a little bit more. They're not gonna be ready for you for a while, so
Well,
I
let's
don't
just,
know if it'll even, the request will even come before you break for the summer.
You just keep it on a short-term goal.
Yeah, we
So-
dare not act on it until something happens.
It's
so
a,
we
yeah,
won't put it on the calendars yet.
not yet, please.
Long-term goals, update SMIC development target 2022. We talked about that.
So we finish that, and then we're gonna bring it for you to approve the update. And then, we have it on November 61st session to review it again. Next, just keep it on there as a continuum.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, and so target completion 2022,
So it's
we
every.
do it on the work
Every
session
5 year-
and, yeah.
Every 5 years, we have to bring it before council for approval. But like I said, the clerk and I talked about, we think that it should be a resolution also that you approve the updated plan for that year. So we should be doing this every fall, so we can approve it for that year.
Right, so we've got it on the work session for November 16th.
Correct.
And then we can, then we can take action on the 7th of December to submit whatever we're gonna submit to council.
Correct, in order, if we need more time, we can talk it again and bring it to
Right.
the January meeting.
Right, okay, sounds good.
Encourage the city to install demonstration systems highlighting renewable and alternative energy sources for public awareness. Target completion first installed by 2022. I guess I'm not quite sure what those would be, although,
Mr. Chair, that was, I think that was one I had added on there, and at the time, we only had maybe 1 or 2 solar installs, so that was kind of the hope there was gonna break the ice on that, but since that's been done, I almost think, just looking at how the board, favors heat pump solar installs where possible, that we could maybe include that in the input to the capital improvement plan. Would that be appropriate? So my thoughts are like, if we're gonna build a building, we should encourage, putting solar, using a heat pump, which
Oh,
we've
yeah.
done, but also, draw attention to it if it's publicly viewable, as a, it's kind of a foot forward. So I don't know if that would be a long-term goal, or if we could somehow include that up there, if that would be appropriate.
I feel like what would be ideal is if the chamber were to have a pamphlet that had the various locations and the different energy sources. So at the chamber, we have a heat pump. At AvTech, we have wind. At wherever, we've got solar. At the Sea Life Center, they have, whatever. So that so people could go around and see the different things. And we have a way to give them a map. Here, you can look at this one, you can see this one. I feel like that's the ultimate goal.
Do you want to maybe change that to highlight renewable energy systems? Just remove the encourage city to install part?
well, I don't think it can be a long-term goal.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's a short-term
Yeah.
for one thing.
It was
and
long-term at the time,
It's almost like an energy fair kind of thing.
right?
In an ongoing way, yeah.
Just stepping back, if I may. So I'm assuming the end goal is to get more of these systems in place, correct? Is
I
it,
think it's to find the best method forward, and that may be true.
so I'm saying the long-term objective behind this bullet point is to get more of those solar panels, heat pumps, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I
Would it
think
be
so.
worth maybe
Yeah.
updating the bullet point to say, investigate the barriers to that existing? Because this almost assumes that public awareness is the reason why it's not happening, but maybe the real reason is financing or availability, or if that's the goal, is for more of those systems to get implemented, maybe finding out why those are not and what you need to do to actually, because you're kind of just presupposing that the reason why that's more of that is happening is lack of awareness.
Well, we had dropped the energy fare at that point, I think was part of that too, so that was kind of like a, you know, hedge against the awareness part, so that was part of that.
We have a priority, explore and promote, if I might.
Sure.
Explore and promote energy alternative community sustainable practices. That's something we've already talked about. This is a little redundant, but I think the idea was that at the time Board Member Smith brought this forward, there
Dave.
was not a lot of action going on.
Sorry for the interruption.
Well, I think the idea that it's a short-term goal is being addressed by the other area exploring remote energy alternatives community.
As the maker of that original idea, would you agree that we've already got something in here?
In a way, I think if it's definitely tied into a lot of things, but we did drop the energy fare, I think, on a feasibility basis, and I think there's still a lot of questions to answer going forward. We still, it will be addressed in the fall, right? When we review the solar installations, but we haven't really looked at the heat pumps. We really haven't looked at hydro much more, or wind alternatives, or energy efficiency. Like it would be missing. Yeah, it's.
I really like.
Similar with the climate action plan. It's like how do we embody that in something that
Right,
we can
I
make
like the
happen?
phrase though, explore barriers.
Okay.
I like that, if there's a way that we can incorporate that, because I think it just shifts the focus a little to more about what is the problem here, what's the holdback.
Yeah, I have to agree. I believe the community of Seward is very aware of alternative energies and how they can be beneficial. But the reality is that some of these programs that could employ are very expensive, you know, and they're not. It would be nice if there was a way to find some sort of promoting long-term return for the person investing that sort of money.
Right.
You know, the federal incentives were really nice, but I don't even know if they exist anymore or are getting ready.
Yeah, they exist.
I think one more year anyway at the moment.
Well,
But still a sizable outlay for any of it.
Infrastructure bill.
Right, right. You know, personally, we were ready for solar panels, and then the wind started blowing, and we've had to completely redesign where we're putting them and how we're putting them, because what renewable energy planned for what we had, when they came out in November and they like couldn't stand where they were going to put them, it was like, okay, we have to do this differently. So there's all kinds of barriers.
I think, if I might, the city suggesting that it really isn't encourage the city to install that we're trying to accomplish.
Well, I would just hate for us to spend public dollars building
Right.
an illustrative example, and then somebody like Board Member Paquette going, yeah, I'm aware of it, and yeah, I want to do it, but I can't, and here's why. And so
Right.
instead of investing those dollars in what I think it's just my personal opinion, that I think most of our citizens are aware of it. It's just how do we, as a municipality, help them overcome the barriers so that they can have it take
That's
place.
exactly it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so if we were to just say, support the installation of demonstration systems rather than asking the city to do it.
We don't need demonstration in there at all.
So support and highlight renewable and alternative.
Just support renewable and alternative energy.
why don't we just say that and leave it in long-term goals, because it's gonna be for a while.
Okay.
Did the clerk get?
So,
Yes.
just want to throw a little tidbit. The classic example of expense and who can afford it is demonstrated in my area where I grew up. I grew up in a huge farm area. When I left 50 years ago, there wasn't a single windmill. In the last 5 years, there's now 500, and some of them are over 500 foot tall. They're huge windmills. They weren't put there by the state of Michigan. They were put there by the state of Ohio. And the state of Michigan gets nothing out of it. The point is, Ohio was able to come up with resources, somebody, a business. Nobody in Michigan was able to, so.
Sounds like a Buckeye Wolverine.
I'm glad that you brought up windmills, because something that's on my list sort of here in long-term goals and along with this one is, if you've been paying attention to the issues on the West Coast, there's a proposed offshore wind farm going in off Northern California that's causing a lot of controversy and a lot of support, and I think that idea of being aware of what's going on down there and how it's being handled, I think it's an important thing to just keep tabs on, and at some point in time somebody's going to make some recommendation for somewhere up here, and so just being aware of it.
Well, we have a work session in September 25th that we're going to deal with alternative energy, but that doesn't mean that's the only time we can should
Right.
talk about it.
Just something to keep on the radar for long term.
Okay, promote open air venues for public gatherings.
That was me, because in response to COVID, and I think that we continue to have that need.
I agree. I think I would almost say promote any venue for public offerings, because the railroad, our mayor has left, but the railroad is changing. They eventually will tear down that warehouse there, and that is a huge thing for the city of Seward. So I think we are going to need to somehow look at,
The building, another one.
not the same kind of building though.
It's gonna be big enough to support all the cruise ship passengers. It's pretty good size.
Well, okay, I haven't seen the most recent drawing. If its square footage is roughly equal,
I don't think we've been shown definite plans, but I know that it's going to be a pretty good size. I think they want to do it as a,
There is
way they
one
get
down
the
the
best-
shore.
the way they get the best money out of it is if it's a multi-use facility. And so I think that's, I mean, the plans
I
are,
think we all weighed in on that early, and I think the railroad is open to that and understands that. And we have an advocate, a strong advocate for it.
This
So
is a,
I would just ask that we promote open air venues, but all meeting venues, and support them all.
this is an item on Rotary's action list as well. The-
Oh, good,
About
oh, good.
meeting places.
Yep.
Because I also think as a community, the size that we are, I don't think we can't rely on only having the cruise ship terminal, whatever the new one is or the old one, because in the summer, for 4 or 5 months, it's not an option. So anybody that's doing any kind of gathering during the summer and shoulder seasons, we still have the problem.
If we can get through this COVID thing, both AbTech and the schools would be available again, which I think are off the table right now. You're right, it's an important thing for any community of any size to see what's happened in Anchorage with Sullivan Arena as an emergency use, has taken that venue out of the opportunity it impacts. Okay. Section 2, resolution shall take effect immediately upon adoption.
Yeah.
That's our,
If I may, there's an addition I would propose to
Yeah.
our September 7th meeting, which is kind of open right now.
yeah,
I'd like to invite somebody from the hatchery to come in. So while I lived in Oregon, I served on the Ocean Acidification and Hypoxia Committee for the state. And a lot of the work being done up and down the West Coast dealing with ocean acidification and hypoxia, a lot of it's being done right here in Seward. I don't think there's a big awareness of the work that's being done on those issues that
You're
are
talking about Ludic?
down here. So I think it'd be interesting, it affects fisheries, it affects our water use, our sport fishermen, our commercial fishermen, everybody who lives in and near the water, those trends that they're capturing. Right now, everybody's in a data gathering phase of temperatures and levels of acidification and hypoxia and how those are moving through the Pacific Ocean up the coast. Obviously with the highest concentrations hitting down in the lower parts of California, but they're starting to affect shellfish. And there's a huge concern about it migrating into other crustaceans and the impact that has on the entire supply chain. So I think it'd be interesting just to hear where they are and what they're.
Just to know, you can, any meeting can have a presentation.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the clerk was gonna say it too.
Great,
You can
thanks.
have a presentation. in
Good to
any
know.
meeting.
So is that
Yeah.
asking Jeff or someone over there? to
Somebody
do
over there to come and let us know what they're doing. And
Yeah, I think that's great.
that? Yeah.
And if you haven't taken a tour of that facility, you can go down and talk to Jeff. He'll give you a tour. Him and Mood will show you what they got. They've got a lot of neat things going on over there.
it is a fabulous resource that really gets overlooked, I think.
Okay, what else? So we've been through the priority list.
I'll work on that and get the information.
Anytime you're ready.
What's Colby got?
well, so
Warner Lawrence,
mine-
did you have a few things you
I
want?
just had a couple things that I wanted to mention, and I was hoping that the mayor would still be here, but she left. And this is just a personal thing that's I've been wanting to air. And it kind of has to do with the sixth bullet point under our priorities is promoting quality of life for the Seward residents. And you just mentioned AvTech not being available to the residents, and there's this nice facility there. It's a gym, it's a racquetball court, and the public can't use it right now. I'm one of those people. I love playing racquetball, and social media, I posted something, and the mayor mentioned back that the city is in, and maybe you can help.
Negotiations for, they're supposed to open up in January.
Right. So I just wanted to bring it up that I would love to have the city push for that to happen, because it's not just me, that it's everybody in this town that can't.
So our Parks and Rec, just for everybody's awareness, our Parks and Rec director and his staff have been in numerous times per month communication with AvTech about that issue, and we'll continue to advocate for it to be opened as quickly as possible.
Right, and if there's a way that this board or the council, if there's something that needs to go beyond the members at AvTech and needs to go to the governor or state legislator or something.
It's
like
higher up where it's keeping it closed, but I think that the AvTech director was saying that she looks like she's progressing to opening in January. We sat for a week down there in Seattle when she was discussing how this is going, looks like it's going to happen.
Great, because it's cold and windy outside.
Yeah.
Open air, public gatherings don't happen.
There's a song by it.
And something else that I had a question about, and again, it was more for Mayor Terry or for Railroad, Ms. Terry, with the Huna Totem stuff that's happening over in Whittier. I'm curious what's happening with the negotiations with the Seward cruise ships, because that's got to be in direct competition with what's happening here, and it's for my business personally, it's concerning. So I don't know if you have any,
You want to touch
either
on
of you
that?
have any data on that that you can share?
So,
Or at
I
least
can't share everything. I'll share this, that the city has been in contact with the appropriate folks. I know there's a lot of discussion about what's going on in Whittier and HTA. I know Russell Dick with HTA has been in contact with the city, and that project has been proposed, but I can't share a lot publicly, but the city is doing everything possible to communicate the importance, because anything, to your point, I would agree, and I know I've talked to Tom Tugas about this as well at length, and it's very conceivable that if that Whittier project were to happen, it would have a detrimental impact on Seward, and potentially cut our cruise ship visitation by 40% or something of that sort. So, yes, we're doing everything within our power.
I'm not privy to any of this information. Is some sort of terminal development or what?
So
Yeah, they
Hunatoton
posted-
Corporation is proposing a collaboration with the city of Whittier where they would, I don't know anybody that's familiar with Icy Strait Point, but in 2017-ish, they built a new cruise ship dock just outside of Huna. And they put in a second dock this past year, I believe, using, remind me, who's funding?
Ada.
Yeah, but
There's
it's,
some Ada money.
And are
Duh,
these docks
this
is
for the
Doy.
big cruise ships or the?
yeah, using Doyon
Oh, yeah,
funding.
don't-
So,
yeah.
so that proposal is out there, to kind of do the same thing that got going on at Icy Strait Point in Whittier. It's a $200 million project.
And are these for the mega cruise ships?
No.
Okay.
Yep, if I might, the proposal is out there. The technical application of that is way out there. They're
Yes.
gonna be dredging, they're gonna be permitting. The area that they wanna put it in is, as far as docking ships, could be, they probably couldn't pick a worse spot. But,
So- Some people remember when a bunch of our cruise ships left here
Yep.
and went to Whittier, but they came back.
yeah,
So
50 cents
I
a
think-
head.
Huh?
It was over 50 cents a head.
Yeah, so I personally think we're gonna be fine. You know, yeah, they might take a few, they might send more, but I think we got more ships coming now, because the mayor was saying, that they got more ships coming. The following year, they're gonna have more ships. So, and I think with the new dock gonna go in down here with whoever gets the bid or whatever, I think we're gonna see an increase. in
Well, I guess
larger ships, yeah.
that's my point though,
Yeah.
I mean, how long we've been, this has been several years, we've been dealing with trying to get somebody to partner up with the railroad, and maybe it's time to like really push the ball, because if they start building that in Whittier before we get somebody contracted to do it here, might mean that a lot of cruise ships don't
Here's
come to Seward.
2023 they're starting. They should be announcing here within the next month or so who's got it.
That's great.
I think you're both on the right area to be concerned. And I've seen that when Carnival pulled out and went over there, and there were some of us that said good riddance, because they were playing hardball with the city, and they went over there, but they did come back. At that time, there were other, even smaller, but boats that left their people here. So there was actually more business downtown per boat than there was. The Carnival go on a bus and they're gone. You know, they wouldn't even, if they let them go downtown, it's just a sightseeing tour, they wouldn't spend any money.
Not that I want to throw an interesting tidbit out there, and I agree that it's an issue for concern, but the revenues last year were up without cruise ships.
For sure. Us too, 100%.
Yeah.
But I think just for Seward in general, I mean, the head tax that comes off the ships, just that part of it is a huge thing for this town, and I know that everybody in the administration is doing everything they can, and the railroad is doing everything they can, but I think it's just information that everybody needs to know, that there is now discussion of something that could be very competitive to Seward.
Well,
I think
and-
it'd be helpful to have we get a railroad report at our regular meeting, and we could probably ask them to expand a little bit. We're gonna have information pretty soon on the actual development that's here. But to express the interests of the city and doing everything we can to support an industry that's critical to the city of Seward.
And if I may add, well, I mean, certainly we saw on the highest ever recorded sales tax numbers that we've seen. There's 100 different things that you don't think about. Just, I'll use a few illustrative examples. The city of Seward sells water to cruise ships. I think it was $100,000, $110,000 in 2019. So when we'd go and do a rate study, you look at that consumption, and that has an impact on residential, small general service, all those users. We're looking at a project to start selling power to cruise ships. That's going to decrease everybody else's rates when you go to do a rate study and you look at where power's being sold. Our CPV money that we collect off of cruise ship visitation, a lot of those funds are used to help fund the free shuttle service that brings customers in from the cruise ship dock into downtown Seward. So while we may not see a really high level of direct, unlike southeast ports, you know, Seward's different, it's a different model, but there's a lot of downstream impacts that cruise ship visitors have on us as well, so.
Well, I agree with you, by the way, which there's a lot of things that are hidden that we don't realize. But I want to tell you that I'm very proud of the fact that the harbor, the city of Seward, and businesses over the last 30 years have turned Seward into a destination port worldwide. Everywhere I go, when I say I'm from Seward, Alaska, I've been there, I'm going back. And I'm serious about that. I'm amazed. People know where I'm from.
It's a good trend. It's a good trend. It's not automatic though.
No.
It's guys like your business and others that have made that destination happen. And it's a cycle though. Like a lot of things, it's a cycle. We need to be proactive, like where Member Lawrence is concerned, and appropriately, but you know, you mentioned world class. Otter Skull used to bring German hunters into the area. You know, it was on the map years and years ago, and then it went away, and it comes back. So staying on top of these things is important.
I'm pretty sure the mayor, as soon as she knows, she'll let us know, let everybody know. So I'm pretty sure she'll put something out with the clerk.
How do we do?
Awesome.
Okay. Everybody have their stuff? Okay. So we got a schedule to work on. I don't think we have our regular meeting scheduled, but I'm sure council will bring some things to us. I certainly appreciate the input from the city administration, Steve. It's why we're here. And we won't do a debriefing of everybody. Thank you. Welcome to board member. How do you say your last name?
Homdahl.
Homdahl. I'll get it. And for your information, Mike Brown, who is an excellent candidate, has withdrawn his application. And we are in the hunt. So.
Or we're going to tackle the idea of making a code change and allowing Zoom attendance.
Then it's going to be considered.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
So I will say that when I talked to Mr. Brown, he is super interested when he returns to Seward in a couple months. He wants to start coming to the meeting. He wants to help and be as involved as he can.
He'll bring a lot. His help will be welcome. Getting someone from the business community, I mentioned the council the other night, that we have a very diverse board. We have people that represent a lot of different industries here. And, you know, I think that's very helpful in our work, is to bring that. So if you have someone in mind, suggest it to them. Okay?
I'm real grateful for Brandy.
Anything else from Jason or Norm? Good. Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.
Hey, Jason.